The storm hit the Sara Prime harder than anyone expected. Danny Cooper stood at the observation window of the research outpost and watched the sky turn black with ash and volcanic debris. Lightning cracked through the darkness, illuminating the jagged mountain peaks that surrounded their small facility. He had seen plenty of storms during his 2 years on this planet, but this one felt different, more violent, more dangerous. "Perimeter sensors are going crazy," Kevin Harris called from the communications station. The young officer looked worried as he studied his screens. "Could be the magnetic interference from the volcano, but I'm getting movement readings on the eastern wall." Danny grabbed his thermal scanner and headed for the airlock. "I'll check it out. Probably just rocks falling from the cliffs." Lisa Grant looked up from her research terminal, her expression stern. "You shouldn't go out there alone. Protocol says we wait until the storm passes. Protocol also says we investigate any potential breach immediately," Danny replied, pulling on his environmental suit. "I'll be fine. It's probably nothing." The wind nearly knocked him over the moment he stepped outside. Danny activated his suit's stabilizers and pushed forward through the driving rain and ash. The scanner showed nothing but static at first. Then a faint heat signature near the base of the eastern wall. Something was definitely out there. He found the creature huddled against the outpost's outer plating, trying to shelter from the storm. At first, Danny thought it was just a large rock formation. Then it moved, and he saw the scales. They shimmered between deep purple and midnight blue, even in the dim light of his helmet lamp. The creature was roughly the size of a large dog, with wings folded tight against its body. One wing hung at an odd angle, clearly damaged. The creature lifted its head and looked directly at Danny. Its eyes were large and intelligent, filled with fear and pain. It made a sound, somewhere between a whimper and a chirp, then tried to crawl further into the corner, where the wall met the ground. Danny had seen plenty of strange animals on Sara Prime. The planet was full of life adapted to its harsh volcanic environment. But he had never seen anything like this. The creature looked almost mythical, like the dragons from old Earth stories. Its body was covered in overlapping scales that seemed to absorb and reflect light in strange ways. Small horns crowned its head, and its tail wrapped around its body protectively. "Easy there," Danny said softly, knowing the creature probably couldn't understand him, but hoping his tone would help. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you." The creature watched him with those enormous eyes. Danny noticed deep scratches along its side, and one of its legs was bleeding. Whatever this thing was, it had been through hell to get here. The damaged wing twitched, and the creature made another pained sound. Danny knew he should call this in immediately. Unknown xenofauna required immediate reporting to Central Command. There were protocols for this exact situation, but looking at the injured creature cowering in the storm, Danny couldn't bring himself to follow those protocols. Not yet. He slowly removed his outer jacket and moved toward the creature. It flinched but didn't try to flee. Maybe it was too injured to run, or maybe it sensed that Danny meant no harm. Either way, it allowed him to gently drape the jacket over its shivering body. "Come on," Danny said, carefully scooping the creature into his arms. It was heavier than it looked, but not impossibly so. The creature tensed for a moment, then seemed to relax against his chest. Danny could feel it trembling. Getting back inside without being seen proved easier than expected. The storm had driven everyone away from the outer sections of the outpost. Danny made his way to the medical bay through the service corridors. The creature clutched carefully against his suit. The medical bay was empty. Danny set the creature down on one of the examination tables and quickly gathered supplies. The wing was definitely broken, and the cuts along its side looked infected. He worked carefully, cleaning the wounds and setting the wing as best he could. The creature watched him the entire time, occasionally making soft sounds but never trying to bite or scratch him. "You're pretty smart, aren't you?" Danny murmured as he wrapped the wing in a stabilizing bandage. "You know I'm trying to help." The creature blinked slowly, almost like it was agreeing with him. Danny was finishing up the bandaging when the door slid open. Lisa stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with shock. "Danny, what the hell is that? I found it outside during the storm." Danny said, not looking up from his work. It's injured. I couldn't just leave it out there. Lisa stepped closer, her scientific curiosity clearly warring with her sense of protocol. Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you're in? We have rules about this. You should have reported it immediately. 2020 2020 2020 20. I know, Danny said. He finished securing the last bandage and stepped back. The creature's breathing had steadied, and some of the fear had left its eyes. But look at it, Lisa. It's just a baby. It's scared, and hurt, and alone. Lisa moved around the table, examining the creature from different angles. Her expression shifted from anger to fascination. I've never seen anything like this in any of the planetary surveys. Those scales, the wing structure, the cranial development. This is completely new. Can you give me 24 hours? Danny asked. Before we report this to Central Command? Are you insane? Lisa shook her head. This is a major discovery. We need to document everything. Run genetic tests. Establish containment protocols. 24 hours, Danny repeated. Just to make sure it's stable. To give it a chance to recover from whatever happened out there. The creature made a soft trilling sound and looked between them. Lisa sighed, running a hand through her hair. You're going to get us both fired, she said. But fine, 24 hours. Then we do this by the book. Danny nodded, relief flooding through him. He looked down at the creature, which was now watching him with what almost seemed like gratitude. Thank you, he said to Lisa. Don't thank me yet, Lisa replied. When Central Command finds out about this, 24 hours isn't going to matter. They'll want this creature in a lab, and they'll want it there yesterday. Danny knew she was right. But as he looked at the injured creature on the table, he couldn't bring himself to regret his decision. There was something special about this animal. Something that went beyond simple xenobiology. The way it looked at him, the way it had trusted him enough to let him help, it all suggested an intelligence that surprised him. The creature shifted on the table, curling into a tighter ball. Its scales dimmed slightly as it closed its eyes, finally allowing itself to rest. Danny pulled up a chair and sat down beside the table. What are you doing? Lisa asked. Staying here, Danny said simply, just in case it wakes up scared. It should see a familiar face. Lisa looked at him for a long moment, then shook her head with a small smile. You always were too soft-hearted for security work. I'll be in the lab running some preliminary scans from the readings I just took. Try not to let it eat you. After Lisa left, Danny sat in the quiet medical bay and watched the creature sleep. Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside, everything felt strangely peaceful. He didn't know what would happen when the 24 hours were up. He didn't know what Central Command would say or do. But he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let anyone hurt this creature. Whatever it took, he would protect it. Danny woke to the feeling of something warm pressed against his arm. He had fallen asleep in the chair next to the examination table, and the creature had somehow moved closer to him during the night. Its scaled head rested on his forearm, and he could feel the steady rhythm of its breathing. The wings were folded carefully against its body, the injured one still wrapped in the bandage he had applied. When Danny shifted slightly, the creature's eyes opened immediately. They were a brilliant amber color in the medical bay's lighting, and they focused on him with clear recognition. The creature made a soft, chirping sound, almost like a greeting. Good morning to you too, Danny said quietly. He checked the bandages and was pleased to see that the swelling around the wing had gone down. The cuts along the creature's side looked better as well, already starting to heal. Whatever species this was, it recovered fast. Lisa arrived an hour later with scanning equipment and a concerned expression. The 24 hours are almost up. We need to decide what we're going to tell Central Command. The truth, Danny said, that I found an injured animal and provided medical assistance, and then kept it hidden in the medical bay overnight without reporting it? Lisa raised an eyebrow. That's going to go over well. I would be again. To center. However, to center come, wither one. I would be again. I would be again. I would be again. To center calm, I would be again. To center calm, the creature watched their conversation with interest, its head turning back and forth as each person spoke. Lisa noticed and stopped talking, staring at it. Did you see that? It's following our conversation like it understands what we're saying. I noticed that last night, Danny said. It's smart, Lisa. Really smart. Lisa set up her equipment and began running scans. The creature remained calm throughout the process, though it kept glancing at Danny as if checking that he was still there. When Lisa tried to take a tissue sample, however, the creature pulled away and made a low warning sound. It's okay, Danny said, moving closer. She's just trying to help, like I did last night. Remember? The creature looked at him for a moment, then relaxed and allowed Lisa to take the sample. Lisa shot Danny an amazed look. It responded to you. Not just to your tone, but to what you were saying. Danny, this is incredible. Over the next few days, as they continued to study the creature in secret, it became increasingly clear that they were dealing with something extraordinary. The creature, which Danny had started calling Ember because of the way its scales seemed to glow when it was content, showed problem-solving abilities that rivaled some of the galaxy's recognized intelligent species. Lisa set up simple puzzles to test Ember's cognitive abilities. The creature solved them easily, often finding more efficient solutions than Lisa had anticipated. When Danny taught Ember to respond to simple commands like sit and stay, the creature learned them after just 1 or 2 repetitions. This isn't just an animal, Lisa said on the 3rd day. Look at these brain scans. The neural complexity is off the charts. Ember might be as intelligent as we are, just in a different way. Kevin found them in the medical bay that afternoon. He looked at Ember, then at Danny and Lisa, and shook his head. You two are in so much trouble. Do you know how many regulations you've broken? We were going to report it, Lisa started to say. But Kevin held up his hand. Save it. I've already sent the preliminary report to Central Command. They're sending someone to evaluate the situation. Danny felt his stomach drop. Kevin, you didn't have to do that. Actually, I did. It's my job. Kevin's expression was sympathetic but firm. Look, I get it. Ember seems harmless. But we don't know what we're dealing with here. What if there are more of them? What if they're dangerous? As if understanding that it was being discussed, Ember moved closer to Danny and pressed against his leg. The creature's scales had taken on a slightly darker hue, and its body language suggested anxiety. Does that look dangerous to you? Danny asked, gesturing at Ember. Kevin sighed. No. But that's not the point. Central Command has rules for a reason. When they get here, they're going to want to take Ember to a proper research facility, one equipped to handle unknown xenofauna. Over my dead body, Danny said quietly. Danny, be reasonable, Lisa interjected. We can't provide the kind of care and study Ember needs here. A proper facility would have resources we don't have access to. A proper facility would also put Ember in a cage, Danny shot back. Run experiments. Treat Ember like a specimen instead of a living being. That night, Danny couldn't sleep. He had moved a cot into the medical bay so he could stay with Ember, and the creature had taken to sleeping curled up next to the cot. But tonight, Ember was restless. The creature kept making sounds, soft cries that seemed to echo through the quiet bay. Danny sat up and looked at Ember. In the dim light, he could see distress in the creature's posture. Ember's head was tilted back slightly, and the cries came in regular intervals, almost like a call. What's wrong? Danny asked, moving to sit on the floor next to Ember. Ember looked at him with those intelligent eyes, and Danny could have sworn he saw sadness there. The creature made the calling sound again, then pressed close to Danny as if seeking comfort. Danny spent the next day researching everything he could find about the Sara Prime's fauna. Most of the planet remained unexplored, with only a few regions properly surveyed. The mountains where he had found Ember were particularly dangerous and largely unmapped. What he found in the geological surveys made his heart sink. 3 weeks ago, there had been a massive volcanic eruption in the mountain range north of the Outpost. The lava flows had been extensive, covering hundreds of square kilometers. Lisa. Danny called her over to his terminal. Lisa studied the data, her expression growing somber. If Ember came from that region, and if Ember's species lives in family groups like we theorized, then Ember's family is probably gone, Danny finished. That's what the crying was about last night. Ember was calling for them. Lisa pulled up her own research. I've been studying Ember's social behavior. Everything suggests this species forms strong familial bonds. Hatchlings separated from their family groups show severe psychological stress. Some refuse to eat and simply waste away. That's not going to happen, Danny said firmly. Ember has me. Danny, you can't replace Ember's entire family. Maybe not. But I can try. When Commander Victoria Hayes arrived from Central Command 2 days later, she made her position clear immediately. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She studied Ember through the observation window of the medical bay with clinical detachment. This creature needs to be transferred to the Xenobiology Research Station on Proxima 4, she said. They have the facilities to properly study it. Ember isn't an it, Danny said. And separating Ember from the only familiar presence will cause serious psychological harm. Hayes turned to look at him. Officer Cooper, I understand you've formed an attachment to this creature. But your feelings don't change the reality of the situation. This is a major scientific discovery. It needs to be handled by professionals. I am a professional, Danny replied. And I'm telling you that moving Ember right now would be cruel. Cruelty is a human concept, Hayes said. We have no idea if this creature even experiences emotions the way we do. As if in response, Ember pressed against the window from inside the medical bay, scales shifting to a dark, anxious color. The creature's eyes were fixed on Danny, and it made a distressed sound that was audible even through the glass. Hayes frowned. Interesting reaction. Ember knows something's wrong, Lisa said, joining the conversation. Commander, I've been studying Ember's behavior extensively. This species shows clear signs of emotional intelligence. Separation from Officer Cooper at this stage could be genuinely harmful. Your concerns are noted, Dr. Grant, Hayes said. But my orders stand. The creature will be transferred tomorrow morning. Officer Cooper, you are not to interfere. Is that understood? Danny wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, but he knew that direct insubordination would only make things worse. He nodded stiffly. That evening, Danny sat with Ember in the medical bay. The creature seemed to sense his mood and stayed close, occasionally making soft sounds as if trying to comfort him. I don't know what to do, Danny admitted aloud. I can't let them take you away, but I can't just steal you and run either. Ember lifted a clawed hand and gently touched Danny's arm. The gesture was so deliberate, so clearly meant to provide comfort, that Danny felt his throat tighten. The alarm woke everyone at 3 a.m. Danny bolted upright on his cot in the medical bay, and Ember immediately jumped to attention beside him. The outpost's emergency lights bathed everything in red, and the warning sirens echoed through the corridors. Perimeter breach, eastern wall. Kevin's voice came over the communication system. Multiple contacts. Large ones. Danny grabbed his weapon and headed for the door, but Ember blocked his path. The creature's scales had turned almost black, and a low rumble came from its throat. Not a warning directed at Danny, but at something else. Something outside. Stay here, Danny ordered, but Ember followed him anyway as he ran toward the command center. The main screen showed thermal images of at least a dozen large creatures circling the outpost. They were massive, easily 3 times the size of Ember, with thick, armored bodies and powerful jaws. Danny recognized them from the survey files as ridge prowlers, apex predators native to Thesara Prime's volcanic regions. Why are they attacking the outpost? Lisa asked, staring at the screen. Ridge prowlers usually avoid human settlements. The storm must have driven them down from the mountains, Commander Hayes said, her calm voice cutting through the tension. They're hunting, and we're in their territory. Seal all external doors and activate the defensive perimeter. The outpost shook as something heavy slammed into the outer wall. On the screen, one of the prowlers had found a weak point near the eastern airlock. It was the same section where Danny had found Ember during the storm. The eastern wall is compromised, Kevin reported. That section was damaged during the volcanic activity last month. We never finished the repairs. Another impact, and the lights flickered. Danny could hear the grinding sound of metal being torn away. We need to evacuate that section, Hayes ordered. Seal the internal blast doors. Contain them to the outer corridors. But Danny knew the outpost's layout. If they sealed the blast doors, they would trap 3 crew members who were currently in the Eastern Research Lab. Commander, we have people in that section. Hayes' expression tightened. Then we get them out. Cooper, take a team and evacuate the research lab. You have 5 minutes before I seal those doors. Danny grabbed 2 other security officers and headed for the eastern section. Ember followed, ignoring Danny's repeated commands to stay behind. There was no time to argue. So Danny let the creature come. They could hear the prowlers before they saw them. The sound of claws scraping on metal, heavy breathing, and the occasional roar echoed through the corridors. Danny and his team reached the research lab and found the 3 scientists barricaded inside. Come on, we need to move now, Danny said, ushering them out. They were halfway back to the command center when the first prowler broke through. It rounded the corner ahead of them, its massive body filling the corridor. The creature's eyes glowed in the emergency lighting, and saliva dripped from its jaws. It saw the humans and roared, a sound that shook the walls. Danny raised his weapon, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. The prowler's armored hide could withstand most small arms fire. He was calculating their chances of retreat when Ember pushed past him. The small dragon stood between the humans and the prowler, scales suddenly blazing with an intense inner light. Ember's chest expanded, and Danny realized what was about to happen a second before it did. Fire erupted from Ember's mouth, not the weak flame of a lighter, but a genuine torrent of superheated plasma that lit up the corridor like a star. The prowler screamed and backed away, its armor scorched and smoking. Ember advanced, maintaining the flame, driving the larger predator back. "Move!" Danny shouted to his team. They ran past Ember toward the command center, Danny staying behind to cover them. When everyone was clear, he called to Ember. "Come on, we need to go." Ember cut off the flame and sprinted back to Danny's side. Together they ran for the blast doors. Behind them, they could hear more prowlers entering the corridor, drawn by the commotion. They made it through the blast doors with seconds to spare. Hayes sealed them immediately, cutting off the prowlers in the outer sections. On the monitors, they could see the creatures prowling through the abandoned corridors, searching for prey. Everyone was staring at Ember. The small dragon sat next to Danny, breathing hard from the exertion. The glow had faded from its scales, but there was no mistaking what they had all just witnessed. "It breathes fire," one of the scientists whispered. "Like the dragons from old Earth legends." Hayes approached slowly, her earlier clinical detachment replaced by something closer to respect. "Officer Cooper, your creature just saved several lives." "Ember has a name," Danny said. "And yes, Ember did." Hayes knelt down to Ember's level, maintaining a respectful distance. "I owe you an apology, Ember. I underestimated you." Ember watched Hayes carefully, then looked at Danny as if seeking guidance. Danny nodded slightly, and Ember seemed to relax. "The prowlers are going to keep trying to get in," Kevin said, studying the monitors. "The eastern section is completely compromised. They could break through to the main outpost within hours. We need to drive them away," Hayes said. "But I'm open to suggestions on how to do that without getting anyone killed." Lisa was examining the footage of Ember's fire attack. "Commander, I have an idea. Look at how the prowlers reacted to Ember's flame. They're not used to prey that fights back with fire. What if we use that? Use Ember as bait?" Danny asked, his voice hard. "Absolutely not. Not as bait," Lisa clarified. "As a deterrent. If Ember can demonstrate that kind of power again, the prowlers might decide we're not worth the trouble." Hayes considered this. "It's risky, but it might work. Officer Cooper, I won't order you to put Ember in danger, but I am asking if you think Ember would be willing to help." Danny looked down at Ember. The dragon was watching him with those intelligent eyes, and Danny could have sworn Ember understood exactly what was being discussed. Ember understands that we're in trouble, Danny said. And Ember already proved willing to protect us. But I'm not letting Ember face those things alone. We're 17-4. I'm not letting Ember face those things alone. I wouldn't ask you to, Hayes said. We'll provide covering fire. But if Ember can drive them back like before, we might be able to seal the breach and reinforce the eastern wall. They formulated a plan. Danny would take Ember to the junction point where the prowlers were concentrated. The security team would provide suppressing fire, keeping the prowlers contained while Ember used flame to drive them back toward the breach. Once the prowlers retreated, engineering teams would seal and reinforce the damaged section. It was dangerous. It required perfect timing and a lot of luck. But it was their best option. Danny and Ember took position at the junction, with the security team spread out behind portable barriers. Through the blast door's viewport, they could see at least 8 prowlers prowling through the damaged corridors. Ready? Danny asked Ember. The dragon's scales shifted to a determined shade of deep red. Ember chirped once. A sound that Danny had learned meant agreement. Hayes gave the signal, and the blast doors opened. The prowlers reacted immediately, charging toward the opening. The security team opened fire, their weapons barely slowing the armored creatures. Danny felt fear grip his chest, but Ember stepped forward without hesitation. The dragon's chest expanded, and fire erupted again. This time, Ember maintained the flame longer, sweeping it across the corridor. In a wide arc, the prowlers stumbled back, roaring in pain and anger. One tried to push through the flames, and Ember focused the fire directly on it. The creature's armor cracked from the heat, and it fled back the way it had come. The other prowlers, seeing their packmate driven off, began to retreat. Ember advanced, maintaining the pressure, forcing them back toward the breach in the eastern wall. Danny and the security team followed, providing covering fire for any prowler that tried to turn back. It took 20 minutes of sustained effort, but finally the last prowler fled through the breach and into the night. The engineering team rushed forward with emergency sealant and reinforcement plates. Within an hour, the breach was sealed, and the outpost was secure. Ember collapsed against Danny, exhausted from the prolonged use of fire. Danny carried the dragon back to the medical bay, where Lisa immediately began checking for injuries. Just exhaustion, Lisa said after her examination. Ember will be fine with rest. Hayes entered the medical bay a short time later. She looked tired but composed. The prowlers have moved off. Our sensors show them heading back into the mountains. We're safe. Thanks to Ember. She turned to Danny. Officer Cooper, I'm prepared to admit that I was wrong. Ember is clearly more than just an animal. The bond between you two is real. And it's strong. Does this mean you're canceling the transfer? Danny asked hopefully. Hayes shook her head. I can't do that. But I can delay it pending further evaluation. Ember's actions tonight have raised questions that need answers. Questions about intelligence, about the nature of this species, about what it means for human-xeno relations. She looked at Ember, who was resting peacefully next to Danny. I'm recommending that you and Ember be transferred together to a new research facility, one that's equipped to study your bond and what it might mean. But the choice is yours, Officer Cooper. You can refuse, and I'll find another way. Danny looked at Ember, thinking about everything that had happened. The dragon had risked everything to protect him and the others. The least Danny could do was return that loyalty. Where is this facility? Danny asked. A terraformed moon called Haven Station, Hayes replied. It's dedicated to ethical xenobiology research. If there's anywhere that will treat Ember right, it's there. Danny spent the next week preparing for the transfer to Haven Station. It meant leaving behind everything he had built on Thesara Prime. His quarters, his routines, his friends. Lisa had already started packing up the research data they had collected on Ember, and Kevin had begun documenting their story in detailed reports. But Ember's behavior worried him. The dragon had become increasingly withdrawn since the Prowler attack. Ember still followed Danny everywhere and responded to commands, but the usual brightness in those amber eyes had dimmed. The scales stayed a muted gray color, lacking their normal shifting hues. Ember knows something is changing, Lisa observed one evening as they watched the dragons sleep in the medical bay. Dragons might be more emotionally perceptive than we realize. Ember can sense your uncertainty. I'm not uncertain, Danny said. I'm going to Haven Station. I already decided. Did you? Lisa raised an eyebrow. Because you've been second-guessing yourself for days. I can see it in how you look at the outpost. How you pause when walking through familiar corridors. You're mourning this place already, and Ember feels it. Danny sighed. This has been my home for 2 years. My whole life is here. And I'm giving it up for a creature I've known for 3 weeks. You're giving it up for a friend, Lisa corrected. That's what Ember is to you now, isn't it? Not a specimen. Not a discovery. A friend. Before Danny could respond, Kevin burst into the medical bay holding his tablet. His expression was a mix of excitement and concern. You two need to see this. It's already spreading across the human networks. He turned the tablet to show them a video. The footage showed Ember facing down the prowlers, fire streaming from the dragon's mouth as Danny and the security team fought beside them. Someone had recorded the entire battle and uploaded it to the Galactic Information Network. The video had millions of views already, and the comments were overwhelming. Look at that bond between the human and the dragon. This is what humanity does best. We don't conquer, we befriend. That security officer risked his life to protect that creature, and the creature returned the favor. This is beautiful. We have a mark. Kevin scrolled through dozens of similar comments. Danny, you're famous. Both of you are. People are calling this the most important first contact moment in decades. First contact? Danny frowned. Ember isn't a sentient species representative. Ember's just one individual. Maybe, Lisa said thoughtfully. But what if Ember isn't? What if there are more dragons like this, and we just haven't found them yet? What if this species has been on Thesara Prime all along? Hidden in the unexplored regions. The possibility had occurred to Danny before. But hearing Lisa say it made it feel more real. If there are more, the volcanic eruption might have wiped them out, or driven them into hiding. Which is why your transfer to Haven Station is so important, a new voice said. Commander Hayes stood in the doorway. Officer Cooper, there have been developments. May I speak with you privately? Danny followed Hayes to her office. Ember, as usual, came along despite Danny's attempts to make the dragon stay behind. Hayes didn't object. She gestured for Danny to sit and activated her desk screen. The video of your battle with the Prowlers has caused quite a stir, Hayes began. Public opinion is overwhelmingly in favor of allowing you to keep Ember. Several prominent xenobiologists have weighed in, arguing that separating bonded pairs could set a dangerous precedent for future first contact situations. That's good news, isn't it? Danny asked. It is. But it comes with complications. Hayes pulled up several documents. The research facility on Haven Station has received funding to expand their human xenobonding program. They want you and Ember to be the flagship case study. They're also proposing that you undergo training to become a xenobiological liaison. I'm a security officer, Danny said. I don't have the qualifications for that kind of work. You have something better, Hayes replied. You have Ember's trust. You've demonstrated an intuitive understanding of xenobehavior that most trained scientists lack. Haven Station believes you could help establish protocols for ethical interaction with newly discovered intelligent species. Danny looked down at Ember, who was sitting quietly beside his chair. What would this training involve? 6 months of intensive study. Xenobiology, xenopsychology, linguistics, cultural anthropology, and diplomatic protocols. You would essentially be building a new career from scratch. Hayes leaned forward. But here's the part that might interest you more. Haven Station has received reports of dragon sightings on 3 other frontier worlds. If these reports are accurate, Ember's species might be more widespread than we thought. Danny's heart beat faster. Are you saying there might be other dragons? Other hatchlings like Ember? Possibly. The sightings are unconfirmed, But Haven Station wants to organize expeditions to investigate. If you complete the training, you would be part of those expeditions. You could help find and protect other dragons. The enormity of it all hit Danny at once. This wasn't just about him and Ember anymore. This was about an entire species, one that humanity had unknowingly overlooked. A species that might need protection, might need advocates. I need time to think about this, Danny said. You have 48 hours, Hayes replied. The transport to Haven Station leaves in 3 days. If you're not on it, the opportunity goes to someone else. That night, Danny sat with Ember on the observation deck, watching the volcanic peaks glow in the darkness. The dragon's head rested on his lap. And for the first time in days, Ember's scales showed hints of their usual color. I don't know what to do, Danny admitted. Part of me wants to stay here where everything is familiar, but another part of me knows that if I don't take this chance, I'll regret it forever. Ember made a soft, questioning sound. You want to know what I'm afraid of? Danny asked. The dragon's eyes watched him intently. I'm afraid of failing you. What if I'm not smart enough to do this training? What if I can't help other dragons the way I helped you? What if I mess everything up? Ember stood and placed both front claws on Danny's chest, looking directly into his eyes. The dragon's scales shifted to a warm gold color, and Danny felt something shift inside himself. It was like Ember was telling him that intelligence and training didn't matter as much as heart, that the willingness to try was more important than the guarantee of success. You're right, Danny said softly. I can't let fear stop me from doing what's right. Lisa found them there an hour later. She sat down next to Danny without saying anything at first, just looking out at the mountains. I'm going to Haven Station, Danny said finally. Lisa smiled. I knew you would. You're too stubborn to walk away from something this important. I'm going to miss this place. Miss you and Kevin and everyone here. We'll miss you too, Lisa said. But Danny, what you and Ember are doing, it's bigger than any of us. You're proving that humans can form real bonds with alien species, that we can be partners instead of conquerors. That matters more than you know. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparations. Danny packed his belongings, said goodbye to the Outpost staff, and tried not to think too hard about everything he was leaving behind. Ember seemed to sense the impending change and stayed close, rarely letting Danny out of sight. On the final night, the Outpost threw a small farewell party. It wasn't much, just the dozen people who lived and worked there, but it meant everything to Danny. They shared stories about his time on Thesara Prime, laughed about the pranks Kevin used to play, and toasted to his future success. You know, Kevin said, raising his glass. When I first met you, I thought you were just another by-the-book security officer. Turns out you're the kind of person who rescues baby dragons during volcanic storms and then fights off apex predators to protect them. Who knew? Everyone laughed, and Danny felt his throat tighten with emotion. These people had been his family for 2 years, leaving them hurt more than he had expected. But when he looked at Ember, curled up in the corner of the room with scales glowing a content amber color, he knew he was making the right choice. The transport arrived the next morning. It was a sleek research vessel called the Horizon Explorer, designed for long-range scientific missions. The crew was friendly and professional, and they had prepared special quarters that could accommodate both Danny and Ember comfortably. As the transport lifted off from Thesara Prime, Danny stood at the viewport and watched the outpost grow smaller. Lisa and Kevin had come outside to wave goodbye, and Danny could see them standing near the landing pad until the ship rose too high to make them out anymore. Ember pressed against his leg, and Danny reached down to scratch behind the dragon's horns, a gesture Ember had come to love. It's going to be okay, Danny said, not sure if he was reassuring Ember or himself. We're going to do great things. We're going to help others like you. We're going to make a difference. Ember made a soft, trilling sound that Danny had learned meant agreement. The dragon's scales shifted to a determined red color, and Danny felt his own resolve strengthen. Haven Station was 3 weeks away by standard transport. 3 weeks to prepare, to study, to get ready for the biggest challenge of his life. Danny had asked the transport crew to upload all the available information about xenobiology and dragon sightings to his personal terminal. He planned to spend the journey learning everything he could. As the Sara Prime disappeared behind them and the stars stretched out ahead, Danny felt fear and excitement in equal measure. He was leaving behind everything familiar to venture into unknown territory, but he wasn't doing it alone. He had Ember. And maybe, somewhere in the galaxy, there were other dragons waiting to be found. Other creatures that needed someone to believe in them the way Danny believed in Ember. "Ready for an adventure?" Danny asked. Ember's answering chirp sounded like a yes. Haven Station appeared on the viewport like a small moon, its silver surfaces reflecting the light of the nearby star. The facility was enormous, far larger than Danny had imagined. Docking bays, research laboratories, residential sectors, and vast biodomes spread across its surface. This wasn't just a research outpost. It was a city dedicated to understanding the universe's diverse life forms. Dr. Patricia Green met them at the docking bay personally. She was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and an easy smile. When she saw Ember, her face lit up with genuine delight, rather than the clinical interest Danny had learned to expect from scientists. "You must be Ember," Patricia said, kneeling down to the dragon's level, but maintaining a respectful distance. "I've seen the videos, but you're even more magnificent in person." Ember watched her carefully, then looked up at Danny for guidance. Danny nodded, and Ember took a cautious step toward Patricia. The doctor extended her hand slowly, palm up, and waited. After a moment, Ember sniffed her hand and allowed Patricia to gently touch the scales on the dragon's head. "Incredible," Patricia murmured. "The neural feedback I'm getting through my scanner is remarkable. Ember is processing complex emotional and social cues. This level of intelligence is extraordinary." "Ember saved my life," Danny said, "and the lives of everyone at the outpost. Intelligence doesn't begin to cover it." Patricia stood and smiled at him. "I've read your reports, Officer Cooper. Or should I say, Liaison Trainee Cooper? Welcome to Haven Station. Let me show you around." The facilities were beyond anything Danny had expected. The residential quarters assigned to him and Ember were spacious, with temperature controls that could be adjusted to Ember's preference. There was a large common room, a private study area, and access to an outdoor biodome where Ember could fly once the dragon's wing fully healed. But what truly amazed Danny was the training center. Classrooms equipped with holographic displays, libraries containing xenological data from thousands of worlds, simulation rooms where students could practice first contact scenarios. It was overwhelming and exciting at the same time. "Your training program is customized to your background," Patricia explained as they toured the facility. "We're not trying to make you into a traditional scientist. We're building on your strengths, your intuition, your ability to connect with xeno life, your courage in difficult situations." Over the next few weeks, Danny threw himself into the training. He studied xenobiology and learned about the incredible diversity of life in the galaxy. He practiced xenopsychology and discovered patterns in how different species thought and communicated. He attended lectures on first contact protocols and participated in simulations where he had to navigate complex diplomatic situations. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. There were nights when he wanted to quit, when the material seemed too complex and his brain felt too tired to absorb another fact. But every time he considered giving up, he would look at Ember and remember why he was doing this. The dragon had settled into life at Haven Station remarkably well. Patricia had introduced Ember to other researchers studying draconic species, and the dragon seemed to enjoy the attention. But Ember always returned to Danny at the end of each day, curling up beside him while he studied. 1 month into his training, Danny received news that changed everything. "We've confirmed the sightings," Patricia said, pulling up images on her office display. "There are dragons on 3 other worlds. Not many, but they're there. Small populations that somehow survived whatever catastrophe reduced their numbers." The images showed dragons similar to Ember, but with variations in size, color, and features. Some had longer wings, others had more prominent horns. But they all shared that unmistakable intelligent gaze. "How did we miss them for so long?" Danny asked. "They're incredibly good at hiding," Patricia replied. And we weren't looking. We assumed any creature that looked like a mythical beast couldn't possibly be real. It's a form of cognitive bias. We see what we expect to see. She pulled up another image. This one, showing a young dragon curled up in a cave. This one was spotted on a mining colony on Arcturus 7. The miners reported seeing it scavenging near their waste disposal area. It's malnourished and appears to be alone. Danny felt his chest tighten. The dragon in the image looked so much like Ember had when he first found the dragon during that storm. Alone, scared, and desperate. "When do we leave?" Danny asked. Patricia smiled. "Your training isn't complete yet. You still have 4 months to go. But that dragon needs help now," Danny protested. "Which is why we're sending a team immediately," Patricia said. "But Danny, you need to finish your training. There will be other dragons that need help, and you need to be fully prepared to provide it." It was hard to accept, but Danny knew she was right. So he doubled down on his studies, working harder than ever. He learned about dragon biology from the data Lisa had sent from Thesara Prime. He practiced communication techniques with Ember, discovering that the dragon could understand increasingly complex instructions. And Ember grew. The small dragon that Danny had found, barely larger than a dog, now stood as tall as Danny's waist. The damaged wing had healed completely. And Ember could fly for short distances in the biodome. The dragon's scales had developed a permanent shimmer that shifted between purple and blue depending on mood and lighting. Other researchers at Haven Station began studying the bond between Danny and Ember. They discovered that the connection went deeper than simple training. There was a neurological component, a form of empathic link that allowed Danny and Ember to understand each other on an intuitive level. "It's similar to the bonds some humans form with earth animals," one researcher explained. "But stronger. More sophisticated. Ember doesn't just understand your commands. Ember understands your intent, your emotions, even your unspoken concerns." 3 months into his training, Danny met the other bonded pairs that had been discovered. There were 5 of them now, humans from different backgrounds who had each formed connections with young dragons. A farmer who had found a dragon stealing crops and befriended it instead of driving it away. A pilot whose ship had crashed. And a dragon had led her to safety. A child who had been lost in the wilderness and protected by a dragon until rescue arrived. Each story was different, but they all shared common themes: compassion, trust, and the willingness to look past fear and see the individual beneath the scales. Danny's favorite was a young woman named Sophie Chen, who had bonded with a dragon she called Sparks. Sophie was studying to become a xenobiologist, and she and Danny often studied together while their dragons played in the biodome. "Do you ever wonder what they think about?" Sophie asked one evening as they watched Ember and Sparks chase each other through the air. "Like, what goes through their minds when they look at us?" "All the time," Danny admitted. "Sometimes I think Ember understands us better than we understand ourselves." As his training progressed, Danny learned about the theory that had begun forming among the researchers. Dragons, they believed, had once been a spacefaring species, not technologically advanced in the way humans were, but naturally evolved for space travel. Their fire breath could potentially work as propulsion in zero gravity, and their resilient biology could withstand harsh conditions. "We think they spread across multiple worlds naturally," Patricia explained during one of their sessions. "Like seeds carried by the wind, except across the stars." But something happened. A disease, a natural disaster, something that reduced their numbers drastically. The survivors reverted to a more primitive state, lost their advanced capabilities, and struggled to maintain even small populations. "And now humans are finding them," Danny said, understanding dawning. "We're becoming their partners in survival." "Exactly. These bonds you're forming aren't just beautiful. They might be the key to saving an entire species from extinction." The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on Danny's shoulders, but it also filled him with purpose. This was bigger than just him and Ember. This was about ensuring that dragons had a future. 6 months after arriving at Haven Station, Danny completed his training. The ceremony was small but meaningful. Patricia presented him with his official designation as a xenobiological liaison, specializing in draconic species. "You've worked harder than anyone I've ever trained," Patricia said. And you've proven that the bond between humans and dragons is real, sustainable, and mutually beneficial. I'm proud of you, Danny. The real celebration came later, in the biodome, where all the bonded pairs gathered. Sophie was there with Sparks, along with the others, and their dragons. They had become a family of sorts, united by their unique connections. But the celebration was interrupted by an urgent message from the Galactic Council. A delegation was requesting to visit Haven Station. They wanted to see the human-dragon bonds for themselves. The Council's arrival 2 weeks later was a major event. Representatives from a dozen different species came to observe and evaluate. They watched as Danny and Ember worked together, demonstrating the depth of their understanding. They saw the other bonded pairs and heard their stories. The head of the delegation was a being called Elder Theros, representing an ancient species that had existed long before humans ventured into space. We have seen many species form bonds with animals, Theros said, his translated voice echoing through the observation room. But what you have achieved here is different. These dragons are not animals. They are people, simply different from you in form. Theros approached Ember, who watched the alien with curiosity rather than fear. May I? He asked Danny. Danny nodded, and Theros gently touched Ember's head. The dragon's scales glowed softly, and Theros made a sound of surprise. Remarkable, Theros said. I can feel the intelligence, the awareness. This species was once great, before the fall. And perhaps, with humanity's help, they will be great again. He turned to the assembled group. The Galactic Council recognizes the dragons as a sentient species under the protection of the Interstellar Preservation Act. Humanity is hereby granted custodianship of the Dragon Conservation Program. Use this responsibility wisely. After the council departed, Danny stood with Ember on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The dragon had grown so much since that night in the storm, not just physically, but in confidence and capability. Ember was no longer a frightened hatchling. Ember was becoming something magnificent. We did it, Danny said softly. We actually did it. Ember made a pleased trilling sound and pressed close to him. Patricia joined them a moment later. There's news from Arcturus 7. The dragon the miners found has bonded with one of the rescue workers. They're calling her Ash, and she's recovering well. That's good, Danny said, feeling genuine happiness for the dragon and its new human partner. There's more, Patricia continued. We've received reports of dragon sightings on 2 more worlds. And there's interest from other species in the galaxy who want to help with conservation efforts. Danny, what you started that night on Thessera Prime, it's becoming something bigger than any of us imagined. Danny looked down at Ember, remembering the small, scared creature he had found during the storm, remembering the decision to help rather than report, remembering every moment since that had led to this. It wasn't just me, Danny said. It was Ember. Ember chose to trust me when every instinct probably said to run. That trust changed everything. As if understanding, Ember looked up at him with those intelligent amber eyes. The dragon's scales shifted to a warm gold color, the same color they had been on the night Danny decided to leave Thessera Prime. In the biodome below, they could see other bonded pairs working together. Humans and dragons learning from each other, protecting each other, becoming partners in a way the galaxy had never seen before. Danny had left behind his old life to give Ember a chance, but in doing so, he had found a new purpose. He had discovered that the greatest adventures begin not with grand plans or certain outcomes, but with simple choices. The choice to be kind, the choice to help, the choice to see the individual rather than the species, and sometimes, those simple choices changed the galaxy.